Hello, my name is John Bannon. I'm an attorney and philosopher. In today's video, I'm going to discuss how consciousness is a distinct derivative reality. Um, when I make these videos, I usually discuss Hansonian superdeterminism. Hansonian superdeterminism is a unique class of superdeterminism proven by Swedish theoretical physicist Dr. Johan Hansen. And it says that we live in a fourth dimensional static block universe, but without cause and effect in physics, or without physical causation or probabilistic causation in physics. Instead, we live in this fourth dimensional block universe, which consists of three dimensions of space and one hidden static dimension of time. And the only thing that exists in the block universe besides nothing are particles. But these particles cannot change, they don't move, they're permanent. And this is all a result of the fact that there is no cause and effect in physics. However, these particles can be described using mathematical laws of physics. So the particles do create these patterns of organization as they exist through the static dimension of time. You can find Dr. Hansen's proof in the peer-reviewed physics journal, Physics Essays, Volume 33, Number 2, June of 2020, pages 216 to 218. So, we live in a Hansonian superdeterministic static block universe without cause and effect in physics. Because particles are a reality that is organized to exhibit logical mathematical laws of physics, then brain particles organized to exhibit a different form of logic can manifest a distinct reality of consciousness. So because the block universe consists of these static particles, but these static particles can also be accurately described through logical mathematical laws of physics, then one can infer that the block universe is logic. So if the block universe has this particle logic that manifests the reality of our material block universe, then a different form of logic could manifest a different form of reality. So in the static block universe, all events, whether they're in the future, whether they are present or in the past, are all equally real. And they all presently exist in the static block universe. And they're not going anywhere because you can't change them without cause and effect in physics. Which means that, for instance, if you consciously decide to move your arm in the future, because your arm is undeniably a physical object or physical reality, then that arm movement must already exist in the future static dimension of time. But because your future arm movement must exist and is predetermined, then your conscious decision to move your arm must also be predetermined in order for your arm movement to be predetermined. But the only physical reality that exists where your conscious decision to move your arm is are brain particles. So it has to be the predetermined structure and organization of brain particles that leads to the predetermined conscious decision to move your arm in the future. Um, so it appears that brain particle organization is what leads to our conscious thoughts. And one could wonder how it is that physical particles could lead to an immaterial reality like consciousness. And the answer is because the particle arrangement in the brain creates a special form of logic, a different form of logic, the logic of the possible. Because that logic exists it must have its own reality to exist in, and therefore it manifests a different form of reality, which we experience as consciousness. Now, in this block universe, nothing moves, but you can imagine slices of the block universe, which are like frozen moments of three-dimensional space, and that they abut each other through the static dimension of time. So if you imagine the particles in the brain on one appearing on one hyperplane of space-time, one frozen moment of three-dimensional space, and then you think about those same particles the next moment in the dimension of time, there can be a change in the static position of those brain particles on abutting hyperplanes of space-time over the static dimension of time. So this change in brain particle positions on these two abutting hyperplanes of space-time is the minimum contrast necessary to generate a computational output for a logic of the possible manifesting a derivative distinct conscious reality moment. So if you take the delta or difference in the particle static particle positions from one hyperplane to the next hyperplane abutting each other, then that difference is enough to compute something, and that computation is uh, part of the logic of the possible, and that is what requires the manifestation of a different form of reality, consciousness. So these two hyperplanes and the particle brain particles that appear on them are what this differential is what creates the necessity of a different form of reality, conscious reality, which creates essentially one sliver or one conscious reality moment. So you can imagine as the brain progresses through the dimension of time, there's all these uh, conscious reality moments in sequence through the dimension of time. And you put all those conscious singular moments together, and you get this stream of consciousness or our experience of moving time, our conscious experience of our lives. The logic of the possible requires a reference identity from which qualia can come into and out of existence, which we refer to our conscious selves. So, in a static block universe, as far as the particles are concerned, they all exist equally, past, present, and future. There is no coming into and out of existence for them. But in a derivative conscious reality, using the logic of the possible, it creates a logical circumstance where things logically come into and out of existence for a reference identity that is our conscious being or ourselves. So, this series of singular conscious reality moments put in sequence over the dimension of time is what allows this illusion of something consciously coming into and out of existence as you move from one conscious moment reality to the next. So that's why I call it the logic of the possible. It's the logic that allows for things to possibly be or not be. In other words, things to come in and out of existence. So, consciousness, if you think about it, has all the hallmarks of being a distinct reality. Consciousness is clearly not particles. So, what is it? Particles are a reality. We have a particle reality we call the block universe. But consciousness is real too. We experience it. But it's not particles, but it's real. So, what would you call that? The only thing you can call it is a different reality. It has to be a different reality. There's literally nothing else that you could describe it as, because the only thing you know about is reality, the particle reality. So consciousness is so much different than the particle reality. The only thing even available that you could call consciousness is another form of reality. So there are many reasons to believe that consciousness is a distinct form of reality. For number one, consciousness is immaterial and cannot interact with the material brain. How does something that is immaterial interact with something that is material? It's impossible. There's no point of contact because you're talking about an immateriality versus a materiality. How do they contact one another? They can't. It's a logical impossibility. Two, consciousness adds no weight to the body. So the difference in weight between a conscious body and an unconscious body is zero. There's no change in weight as a result of consciousness. There may be a change in weight in terms of energy. Uh, there's more energy in a conscious brain, but that's particle energy. That's not consciousness. So consciousness itself is an immaterial reality, does not add weight to the body. So how could it be a particle reality? It can't be. Um, three, if you looked inside your brain or somebody else's brain while they're conscious, you will not observe their consciousness. It is simply not there to be seen. We know it's real because we experience it, but you can't observe it. You can only experience it. Well, you can observe brain particles, you can observe particle reality, but you can't observe consciousness. Again, consciousness is not a particle reality. Consciousness is carried locally by the body. So consciousness goes with your brain. Wherever your particle brain goes, your consciousness goes with it, which means your consciousness has to be a derivative of brain particles. Why else would your consciousness go everywhere your brain goes? The brain consists of the most complex arrangement of particles known to us. Well, what do you need all the complexity of brain particles for? Unless it's doing something very unique, like manifesting a different reality, the reality of consciousness, the distinct reality of consciousness. Um, the conscious brain can also follow logic, which means consciousness is certainly logical. Consciousness is not a fundamental reality, however, because one can imagine a universe existing without conscious beings in it. So you can imagine a universe existing perfectly well, just like our universe, but without any conscious beings in it, which means that that physical reality does not need consciousness in order to exist, which means consciousness cannot be a more fundamental reality than the particle reality of the universe. It has to be a derivative reality of brain particles. Um, Brain particles continue to exist despite a loss of consciousness. Well, again, that tells you that brain particles are definitely more fundamental than consciousness, because if you take consciousness away, brain particles are still there, which means consciousness cannot be more fundamental than brain particles themselves. Consciousness is not a composite of conscious parts, whereas particles create composites. So when you experience consciousness, it is a simple experience. It is not a composite of conscious parts. There's no parts to your experience of consciousness, no subdivision which creates the consciousness. It's one unified whole. It's a simple experience. Um, but particles create composites. You can put particles together and create composites. So consciousness doesn't have that composite nature that particles do. It has a simple nature. Again, it's telling you that consciousness is a distinct reality from particle reality. And finally, qualia, like the color red, cannot be described in terms of particles, but must be consciously experienced. So, because you can't um, use particles to get somebody to understand qualia, such as what color red is, assuming they've never seen red before, then that's telling you that qualia, conscious qualia, such as the color red, is not a particle reality because you can't use particles to communicate what the color red is to somebody who's never experienced the color red. So qualia or consciousness has to be a different reality than particle reality. There's literally nothing else it could be. So there you go. Consciousness is a distinct derivative reality of particle reality. Now, I'll give you a second to read the board. All right. Till next time, take care.